Number 1.
Leslie was last seen with his cousin, Shawn Jones, on October 23, 1993 in Cape Croker, Ontario, Canada. The two of them were seen attempting to hitchhike to Wearton, Ontario, Canada. It's unclear as to what occurred next. Shane was last seen on October 23 when he went to a school dance. Leslie was at the home at that time. His mother, Lynette Jones, gave him money and he left alone to get a ride to the dance, which took place in nearby Lion's Head. When Lynette woke up the next morning, her son was gone, and also missing was $500 in Shane's grandmother's car. The car was later found crashed in Lion's Head, and authorities said the inside of the car indicated the driver was bleeding. Authorities chased the two boys in Wearton, and that is the last time they have ever been seen. Shane was troubled at the time of his disappearance. Lynette once searched his bedroom and found pills that he had stolen off of the community. He's also said his dog have been getting aggressive with her. Lynette said these changes and trouble only started happening when he entered high school. Leslie was staying with Lynette and Shawn, and has been there for 2 weeks until the disappearance. Lynette was having troubles with Children's Aid because Shawn and Leslie had not been attending school, and they were preparing to take the boys away. Lynette was preparing to have Leslie leave their residence. There have been numerous sightings of the teens through the years since they disappeared. One of these sightings placed the pair at the Tim Hortons coffee shop in Owen Sound, Ontario, Canada. Some agencies have also said they were seen in Toronto in 1996. It was also rumored they had been breaking into cottages. Authorities and Lynette have doubted that the boys have been living off the radar all this time, since they disappeared, and believe it's possible both boys are deceased. The case remains open and unsolved. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Cape Croker First Nations Police Service 519-534-1233.
Number 2.
Delphine was last seen on the night of June 13, 1990 by her friends as she hitchhiked in the eastbound lane of Highway 16 in Smithers, British Columbia, Canada. She was last seen by them at approximately 10 p.m. and was never seen again afterwards. Delphine lived with her uncle in Telkwa at the time of her disappearance, and he had legal custody of her. She left his home at 2 p.m. and told him she was meeting her 3 friends in Smithers, which was 16 kilometers away from where she lived at the time. Authorities believe that Delphine is a possible victim of a series of killings that took place along the same stretch of the highway since the 1970s. These murders have been named as the Highway of Tears, and all of them involve teenage girls. There were 18 other possible victims of the crime. Delphine is the only possible victim that hasn't been recovered. American serial killer Jack Fowler is considered a likely suspect in Fowler's disappearance. He operated as a serial killer until 1995 and frequently targeted young female hitchhikers. Fowler's DNA was found on the bodies of one of the murdered girls in 2012 and is considered a prime suspect in 2 other cases from the area. He has not been charged with Delphine's case. A year prior to Delphine's disappearance, her cousin, Cecilia Nikal, disappeared from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and has never been found. Authorities believe it's possible that the 2 cases are connected, and that Cecilia was another victim of the Highway of Tears murders. This has not been proven, but authorities suspect foul play in both cases. Delphine's disappearance remains unsolved, and she is believed to have been the victim of a homicide. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Royal Canadian Mounted Police 250-847-3233.
Number 3.
Shawn was last seen with his cousin, Leslie Jones, on October 23, 1993 in Cape Croker, Ontario, Canada. The two of them were seen attempting to hitchhike to Wearton, Ontario, Canada. It's unclear as to what occurred next. Shane was last seen on October 23 when he went to a school dance. His mother, Lynette Jones, gave him money and he left alone to get a ride to the dance which took place in nearby Lion's Head. When Lynette woke up the next morning, her son was gone, and also missing was $500 in Shane's grandmother's car. The car was later found crashed in Lion's Head and authorities said the inside of the car indicated the driver was bleeding. Authorities chased the two boys in Wearton, and that is the last time they have ever been seen. Shane was troubled at the time of his disappearance. Lynette once searched his bedroom and found pills that he had stolen off of the community. He's also sis dog have been getting aggressive with her. Lynette said these changes and trouble only started happening when he entered high school. Leslie was staying with Lynette and Shawn, and has been there for 2 weeks until the disappearance. Lynette was having troubles with Children's Aid because Shawn and Leslie had not been attending school, and they were preparing to take the boys away. Lynette was preparing to have Leslie leave their residence. There have been numerous sightings of the teens through the years since they disappeared. One of these sightings placed the pair at the Tim Hortons coffee shop in Owen Sound, Ontario, Canada. Some agencies have also said they were seen in Toronto in 1996. It was also rumored they had been breaking into cottages. Authorities and Lynette have doubted that the boys have been living off the radar all this time, since they disappeared, and believe it's possible both boys are deceased. The case remains open and unsolved. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Cape Croker First Nations Police Service 519-534-1233.
Number 4.
Cheryl was last seen in Aurora, Ontario on May 31, 1974. She had dinner, and then at 6:30 p.m., she asked her mother, Patricia Hanson, if she could go to her cousin, Linda Van Horn's residence for a sleepover. At first, Patricia said no to her daughter, but Cheryl was adamant about going, and continued to ask for permission until her mother relented and allowed her to go. Cheryl packed her pajamas, a brown paper bag, and prepared for the sleepover before leaving her residence located on Bloomington Road near Blue Hills Academy. The walk to Linda's house was approximately 10 minutes long, but Cheryl never made it to the house. Patricia stated she became worried when she found out that her daughter never arrived when she called the cousin's house. She feared that she might have been hit by a car. She went outside to look for her, but was unable to locate her. She reported Cheryl as missing when she couldn't find her. She has never been seen or heard from since. Cheryl's disappearance prompted a very large and extensive search for her. Over 1,000 people were a part of the efforts to locate her. They sent out 58 teams of people to search for the child and posted rewards of $10,000 for her safe return. In total, the police, thousands of volunteers, CB radio operators, aircrafts, and Queen's York militia units participated in the search efforts. Those involved in the case searched the areas near her home and surrounding areas, but they were unable to locate any evidence of her whereabouts. Investigators believe Cheryl was abducted by a non-family member. After days of searching, they concluded that she likely got into a car and was taken out of the area. For quite some years, investigators had little to no leads in Cheryl's disappearance, and they had no suspects in her disappearance. In 1976, convicted rapist Donald Harry Everingham confessed to being responsible for Cheryl's abduction and murder. Everingham is believed to be responsible for various assaults, murders, and disappearances in Ontario during the 1970s. He was charged with the indecent assault causing bodily harm to an 18-year-old woman who was a student in high school in Etobicoke. The assault occurred on July 10, 1974. The woman was riding her bike at approximately 11:15 p.m. when Donald jumped from his car and knocked her down. He threatened to slit her throat if she didn't follow him to his car, but she managed to punch him in the face and escape. On August 26, 1974, An 8-year-old girl was riding her bicycle towards her residence along a lane off Highway 26 near Craigleith when a car drove past her. The car then turned around and stopped right beside her before a man emerged from the vehicle and struck her over the head. He dragged her into the car and sped off. While driving down the highway, the man undressed and forced the girl to do so as well. He forced the girl to do indecent acts of sexual nature. When they were 20 miles away in the rural countryside, he threatened her with a knife and then performed more disgusting acts upon this girl. She stated that he gave her a choice of submitting to him or he would kill her. The girl stated she submitted to him because I did not want to die. When the man finished abusing her, he knotted a stocking around her neck. This caused her to faint. The man believed she was dead and threw her by one arm into the forest before driving off. The girl said she walked to the road and tried to flag someone down so they could help her. Doris McGowan said she saw the girl but didn't stop because she assumed the child was just a camper streaking. After several hours, the girl was found by Constable James Jenkins of the Ontario Provincial Police. He said he called repeatedly to the girl boy, she wouldn't respond, and he assumed she was dead. When he picked her up, the girl woke up and said, "I've been asleep." The girl was taken to the police detachment, where the stocking around her neck was photographed. She was then taken to the hospital, where the stocking was removed with surgical scissors. The girl was bleeding from the brutal rape, and while she did receive corrective surgery the day after the attack, doctors said she would need more surgery as an adult before she could have any sexual relations or even give birth to a child. When police were tasked with identifying the kidnapper and rapist, the girl was able to remember that she was raped on a blue towel and that after the man tied the stocking around her neck, she saw him shake out the towel. Police found a blue terry cloth towel near the girl's clothing, which were scattered along a countryside road approximately 4 miles away from where her attacker dumped her. A Woodbridge woman, Lillian Young, was able to identify the towel as belonging to Donald, who was 28 years old at the time of the crime and based in Toronto. He was arrested and charged with rape, forcible seizure, and attempted murder in the girl's abduction. Lillian later testified that Donald told her he wanted to kill 3 people by November 1974, and it made her very uncomfortable. Donald was eventually convicted of both crimes and would have faced a life sentence in prison if found guilty, but he was found not guilty by reasons of insanity on the charges. He was committed to the Penetanguishene Mental Health Care Center. If he is to ever be released, he could serve a life sentence for the crimes. In March of 1975, Everingham was officially named as a possible suspect in Cheryl's disappearance, and authorities sought to question him. He confessed that he picked Cheryl up on the street she was walking on at approximately the same time she disappeared, which was 6:30 p.m., and asked her if she believed in God before he murdered her. He was apparently intoxicated at the time he allegedly killed Cheryl. Donald stated he had thrown Cheryl's body over a split-rail fence and into a 200-acre field. He was also able to describe what Cheryl was wearing when she was abducted. Everingham drew a crude map of the area where he allegedly dumped her remains, but an extensive search of the land uncovered no evidence relating to her disappearance. He also allegedly recanted his confession to killing Cheryl. Her alleged murder wasn't the only one he had confessed to. He also admitted to being responsible for the brutal murder of 23-year-old Monique Vallet, who was a French tourist. Monique was found partially nude and strangled to death in a ditch on July 30, 1974 by berry pickers near Collingwood. A man's sock was found tied around her neck. He admitted that on the day of Monique's death, he was driving with a friend when he felt the impulse to kill someone. He dropped his friend off and then picked up Monique, who was hitchhiking at the time of her murder. He killed her and then dumped her in the ditch afterwards. Everingham also allegedly admitted to being responsible for the killings of a Toronto prostitute and a man, but his statements regarding those crimes were inconsistent. According to the William Parker, a lawyer for the Ontario Attorney General's Department, Donald would not be prosecuted for the 4 murders he confessed to. It's possible he was involved in the 1972 disappearance of Ingrid Bauer. She disappeared from Kleinburg, Ontario on August 16, 1972, while attempting to travel to her boyfriend's home, and hasn't been seen since. Authorities who are investigating Cheryl's disappearance are unsure if he was truly involved in the case or not. They have maintained that he remains a person of interest in the case, and he was unable to provide an alibi for the time she went missing. He is currently in his 70s and is located in a mental facility somewhere in Canada. He has never been criminally held accountable for any other crimes besides the 2 assaults he committed after Cheryl's disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Cheryl was said to live her dolls and reading books. She enjoyed hanging out with her cousins as well. She lived on a farm with her 2 brothers as well as her parents in 1974. Her disappearance had a heavy impact on her family, and her parents become nervous to even let their remaining children outside her to school. They later moved to Nova Scotia. Cheryl's family hold out hope that she will be located, and the person responsible for taking her will be brought to justice. Her abduction remains unsolved and foul play is suspected. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact York Regional Police 905-830-0303.
Number 5.
35 years ago, Nicole Louise Morin went to meet a friend and was neither seen nor heard from again. A massive search effort was launched by police for the missing 8-year-old girl, and though officials have received thousands of tips over the years, what happened to Morin remains a mystery. A little girl, sounding not much younger than she was pleading for her life. "Stop. Please. You're hurting me." And then silence. "Oh my God," her mother said. "It's that little girl who was taken from Toronto." 36 years have passed since that day. Player is now 46. The family's rural property off Horseshoe Valley Road has long since been sold, and her mom is gone. But those screams still haunt her to this day. "I truly believe I heard Nicole being killed," she insists. "I know what I heard. My mother knew what she heard. The neighbors heard it as well. Nobody will ever be able to tell me that I didn't hear a little girl die that day." In Toronto in the 1980s, and into the early 90s as well, a shocking number of young girls went missing. And after massive police searches and tearful appeals, all hope would die when their small bodies were invariably discovered. But one of those missing girls has never been found. On the hot morning of July 30, 1985, 8-year-old Nicole Louise Morin left her West Mall apartment to meet her girlfriend in the lobby for an afternoon of swimming in the pool behind their complex. She never made it. Somewhere between her penthouse unit on the 20th floor, where she said goodbye at 11 a.m. to her mom who ran a home daycare, and the elevator, Nicole simply vanished, leaving behind a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Her photo would appear on the front pages of all the newspapers and plastered in store windows, and on utility poles with a description of what the pretty, gap-toothed girl was last seen wearing on July 30, 1985, a peach, one-piece bathing suit with colored stripes, a green headband and red canvas shoes. She was carrying a peach-colored blanket in one hand, and a purple beach towel in a plastic bag in the other. Nicole was the only child of Art and Jeanette Morin. After 12 years of trying, she was their miracle baby. She was very energetic and kind and not at all selfish. She was taking swimming lessons and dancing lessons, ballet and jazz, and liked to go to McDonald's to have some fun, and she loved Ontario Place. She was just a normal, beautiful little child, her father would recall. The couple was separated at the time and Nikal lived in Etobicoke with her mom, while her dad, who worked as a truck driver, lived nearby. It wasn't until the afternoon that Jeanette realized Nikal was missing, costing valuable lead time. Despite the most extensive search in Toronto history, with hundreds of volunteers, a 20-person police task force, and 25,000 hours spent investigating leads, no concrete lead was uncovered. Her parents were cleared as suspects, but police never arrested anyone in connection with the disappearance. But there were strange clues. Shortly after she went missing, Morin found one of his daughter's notebooks, in which Nikal had eerily written, "I'm going to disappear." Also mysterious was a neighbor's recollection of seeing a blonde woman holding a notebook on Nikal's floor about 45 minutes before she disappeared. Police sought her as a possible witness, but she was never located. Web sleuths have posited all kinds of fanciful theories over the years, including Nikal being kidnapped by someone from her father's fundamentalist church to protect her from her parents' impending divorce, to her being sold into a Dutch pedophile ring. Her parents briefly reconciled after her disappearance, only to divorce a year later. Jeanette eventually moved back to North Bay, where she died of a heart attack in 2007. Morin spent the early years in a frenzied hunt for his only child. He hired a private investigator, crossed borders to check out every lead, sent posters to every embassy around the world. Rewards were offered and psychics consulted. "I had to do as much as I possibly could," he told me in a 2013 interview. Morin even followed a tip to a school on Vancouver Island, but the girl who was supposedly Nikal wasn't his daughter at all. "My heart fell to the floor," he recalled. He told a reporter that he almost hoped she'd been abducted as a sex slave. "As horrific as that would be," he said, "at least Nikal would be alive." Despite all this passage of time, there is still a dedicated Toronto police task force looking for Nikal. Run out of 22 Division, 3 full-time officers led by Const. Nikal Sutton continued to work on her case. In 2014, they launched a social media campaign and released a reenactment video to jog people's memories. On the 30th anniversary, they organized a run and candlelight vigil to keep Nikal's memory alive. Last year, they released a new artist rendition of what she would look like as a middle-aged woman. "Unfortunately, because of COVID, we're not able to do anything to mark the 35th anniversary," Sutton explains. Still, the work continues, sifting through old leads and new, reinvestigating persons of interest and re-examining the case using police techniques that have evolved more than 3 decades later. "To this day, I still receive tips," she says. "It was a crime that shook the city. It was just a regular everyday thing to go down to the pool to meet her friend. It was a different time," Sutton says. "This changed how people parented." She still keeps in touch with Nikal's father, who has declined media interviews since 2015. Now 80, he finds it too painful, Sutton says. "It has been a long time now," he told me back in 2013. "If Nikal comes knocking at my door, it will be a wonderful thing, but I don't keep that at the forefront. It just prevents you from moving forward in the real world." He had saved the most meaningful mementos from Nikal's short life and placed them in a cedar chest that he keeps in his living room, waiting for the day she might return. After all these years, Sutton hopes she'll be able to provide Morin with the answers he's been seeking. "Even someone reading this story and remembering a detail, or having a twinge of conscience, could be the key," she says. "Working on a case like this for so long, you can't help but personalize it. I am hopeful. I would have to be hopeful to put this much energy into this case. It's day by day and tip by tip." It was a day or two after Nikal vanished, and Billie Joe Player's mother called the local op to tell them of the piercing screams she and her daughter had just heard in the woods. 2 more neighbors had made similar reports as well. Player doesn't remember there doing any search. Fast forward to 2014 and the police reenactment video. Player called Toronto police herself about what remains seared in her memory. "I still have nightmares. I'll never get over it," she explains. "It was the most awful thing to hear." After interviewing her, police launched a search of the woods on Old 2nd Road North, 20 minutes north of Barrie. But after 2 days without success, they packed up and left. "I was heartbroken because I wanted her to be found," Player sighs. "It still haunts me. I can still hear her screams. I really feel like she's a part of me, and I've always wished I could have saved her, even though I was still little. She's done all she can. Now it's up to others to come forward," she says. "I'm sure there's somebody out there who knows what happened."
Number 6.
Shelley-Anne Bacsu was tiny in size, but her mother told us the 16-year-old had a larger-than-life personality. "She was one of those girls who lit up an entire room when she walked in," Muriel Bacsu said. "She loved life and loved people. And she was very trusting of everyone." Muriel told us she's afraid it was Shelley-Anne's trust in people that contributed to her mysterious disappearance 37 years ago today. On May 3, 1983, Shelley-Anne went to her boyfriend's house at Sunset Trailer Court in Hinton, Alberta, Canada after school. She called her mother around 8 p.m. to let her know she'd be home soon. "Shelley-Anne called and told me she was coming home," Muriel said. "She said a friend was going to pick her up at her boyfriend's house and give her a ride home. She said she would be about 15 minutes and asked if I could make her this noodle dish she loves. But Shelley-Anne wasn't home in 15 minutes. Or in an hour." Muriel told us it was around 9 p.m. that night when she got a call from Shelley-Anne's boyfriend. He asked to speak to her. "I told him that wasn't funny," Muriel said. "But right then, I felt it. Something terrible. Something was very wrong." Shelley-Anne's boyfriend, who did not have a way to drive her home, told Muriel that their friend wasn't able to pick her up either, so Shelley-Anne started walking down Highway 16 toward her home, which is located off Highway 40. Muriel began to worry and decided to call the police. Her husband, Sandy, who is also Shelley-Anne's father, and Shelley-Anne's 17-year-old brother, Tim, drove around the area looking for her. Although it was dark and windy outside, Muriel set out to search on foot. "The wind was just awful that night, one of the windiest nights in Hinton that I can remember," Muriel said. "The wind was howling. It pierced right through me. But I walked up and down that highway, calling out her name." According to the Hinton RCMP detachment, a witness saw Shelley-Anne earlier that evening walking west on the north side of Highway 16 toward the family home, which is located off Highway 40. The witness told authorities Shelley-Anne was carrying her school books and appeared to show no interest in hitchhiking. Muriel said the distance from Shelley-Anne's boyfriend's house to their home was about 4 miles, but said she doesn't believe her daughter would have tried to make that trek. "There were no cell phones then, but she would have called us from her boyfriend's house for a ride," Muriel said. "We just believe something happened to her after she called me saying she was coming home." In the days and weeks following Shelley-Anne's disappearance, authorities, friends and neighbors scoured the wilderness searching for her. "It seemed hopeless," Muriel said. "This area is all wilderness. Dense woods and shrubs and a river. She could be anywhere." A few days later, some of Shelley-Anne's personal belongings were found about 3 miles from her home. A jacket, a bra, pantyhose, a student union card and a library book that had been checked out that day were all discovered alongside Highway 40 near the Athabasca River. But there was no sign of Shelley-Anne. Hinton RCMP authorities interviewed numerous persons of interest in the 3 decades since Shelley-Anne vanished, but no arrests have been made. The Bacsu family moved away from Hinton in 1991, but continued their search for Shelley-Anne. As the years slipped by, Muriel became increasingly frustrated by the lack of movement in her daughter's case. Muriel told us there was a stretch of about 15 years after the 10th anniversary of her daughter's disappearance, where she didn't even hear from RCMP. I'm upset and I'm frustrated, Muriel said. I'm not getting any answers. And now I fear I'm never going to find out what happened to my daughter. I know it's been 30 years. Over 30 years. That doesn't mean she wasn't important. In 2010, authorities took another look at Shelley-Anne's case in relation to the Highway of Tears investigation. Highway of Tears is a corridor of Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert, British Columbia, Canada, where dozens of women have gone missing since 1970. Shelley-Anne is the only Alberta woman listed. When the 30th anniversary arrived in 2013, RCMP authorities again implored the community to come forward with any information that may help the case. Although time has passed, we remain committed to finding Shelley-Anne, said Hinton RCMP Corporal Trevor Summers said at the presser. As in those early days of her disappearance, we continue to encourage anyone with information to come forward. Our hope is that someone will help us solve the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Shelley-Anne's file, which fills 147 banker boxes, is now part of the Alberta RCMP's Historical Homicide Unit, which re-examines unsolved homicide cases. Staff Sergeant Jason Zazelak told us the unit decided to take a fresh look at Shelley-Anne's case at the request of the family. Throughout the years, they have followed up on new tips, re-interviewed witnesses, and had DNA samples tested. DNA found at the scene belongs to an unknown individual who Sergeant Zazelak considers a person of interest, but nothing has yet led authorities to Shelley-Anne. Given the personal effects that were found and the passage of time that has passed, we're, unfortunately, confident that Shelley-Anne was a victim of foul play, Zazelak said. Now, we're focused on finding closure for Muriel and her family. Zazelak said the RCMP is committed to solving this case and encourages anyone who may have seen something or heard something around that time to come forward with information. We never close cases, no matter how old, Sergeant Zazelak said. This case is one that really touches the heart. We haven't given up. Today marks 37 years since Shelley-Anne disappeared, and the Bacsu family still doesn't have answers about what happened to their daughter. Little did I know, or even imagine, that on May 3, 1983, that phone call from Shelley would be the last time I would ever hear her voice, Muriel said. She describes the last 3 decades as being a waking nightmare. Heartbreak continued in their family when Muriel's only other child, Tim, lost his battle with cancer 6 years ago. Now, just a month away from being 76 years old, Muriel says she just wants peace. You would think after 30 years, it would get easier, Muriel said. But it doesn't. I'm going to be 76 next month and I don't want to leave this world without knowing what happened to my girl. In 2013, Muriel started a Facebook page in an effort to share memories of her daughter and to attempt to gather any piece of information that could help solve the mystery surrounding her disappearance. We still encourage anyone with information to come forward, Muriel said. You think it may be nothing, but a tiny bit of information may just be the key to finding out what happened to Shelley. Muriel and her husband Sandy said they feel blessed that Shelley-Anne was part of their lives for 16 years. She was our baby and the bright shining star of our lives, Muriel said. But that star was dim too soon. We'll never know what she could have been. She wanted to be a teacher, but she never got to graduate, or get married, or have children, or live the life she deserved. It was all taken from her. We have none of that, because someone made a bad choice. Muriel told us she has accepted the fact that Shelley-Anne will likely not be found alive. But she still wants to know what happened. She believes there was a sexually motivated accident that night that went terribly wrong, resulting in Shelley's death. "I'm not looking for justice. I don't think I'll get it," Muriel said. "I just want to find my daughter's remains, so I can lay her to rest and give her peace. And for us, there is no such thing as closure. But there is peace. All we want is peace." At the time of her disappearance, Shelley-Anne was 4'11" tall and weighed between 80 and 90 pounds. She is reported to have been wearing a burgundy velour sweater, a burgundy and gray jacket, gray sneakers, blue jeans with a stripe down the legs, a green emerald ring and opal earrings. Shelley-Anne would now be 53 years old. Anyone with information about Shelley's whereabouts is asked to contact the Hinton RCMP detachment at 780-865-2455 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.